Hello all, welcome to the lecture on infanticide. I am Dr. Sanil Kumar MC, working as Professor and Head of the Department of Forensic Medicine, Government Homeopathic Medical College, Kozhikode. So the topics for discussion today is the definition of infanticide, role of a registered medical practitioner in case of infanticide, what are the signs of live birth, what are the natural and accidental causes of death, criminal causes of death of an infant, medico-legal aspects of infanticide, sudden infant death syndrome, battered baby syndrome, and lastly Munchausen syndrome by proxy. So these are the topics that will be discussed today. Once again, welcome to the lecture on infanticide. So infanticide literally means killing of an infant. So who is an infant? So infant refers to a child from birth till he can stand erect. So in India, an infant means a child up to 12 months after birth, and in some countries infant is child up to 14 years. So basically in India, infant is a child up to 12 months after birth. So killing of an infant within 12 months after his birth is called infanticide. The legal definition for infanticide is defined as unlawful destruction of a newly born child. Therefore, infanticide refers to killing a child after delivery till he is 1 year after birth. And clinically, we have to understand certain terms like term born child, who is born at 40 plus or minus 2 weeks. Preterm child is born before 37 weeks. Post-mature child is born after 42 weeks. Mature child weigh more than 2.5 kg. Premature child weighs between 1 to 2.5 kg and who is born after 27 weeks. Immature child is having a weight less than 1 kilogram and is born before 25 weeks. So we have to keep in mind these terms. So lawful destruction of a child refers to therapeutic destruction of a child when it is not capable of independent existence. So therapeutic destruction of a child can also be termed as infanticide when it is done because he is not capable of independent existence. So infanticide in India is considered equivalent to murder, and it is the crime infanticide is tried under section 302 IPC, that is punishment for murder. So in England, mother is not held guilty of infanticide considering her disturbed mental condition due to delivery and lactation, and she is tried for manslaughter, not murder. But in India, there is no such differentiation between infanticide and murder. If she is charged of an infanticide, she will be tried under section 302 IPC. We are having strict laws and also lenient MTP Act. So the cases of infanticide in India are slowly decreasing. However, it is sometimes done by unmarried women, widows, especially after birth, immediately after the childbirth. So earlier infanticide was very common for female child, that is also now decreasing because of lenient MTP Act. Then law considers every child as born dead, and therefore in a case of infanticide it has to be proved that the child was born alive and was then killed. So law presumes that every child is born dead, and we have to prove, so the prosecution has to prove that the child was born alive and then later killed. So then only the term infanticide applies to that particular case. Now coming to the role of medical officer in a case of infanticide. So if at all a medical officer has to examine a case of infanticide, he has to examine first the mother for signs of recent delivery and then examine the child for certain findings like whether the child was stillborn or deadborn, We have to determine the age of the child, that is age according to the stage of development of the fetus, whether the child was born alive. If he is born alive, how long did the child survive, and if he is born alive, what is the cause of death. So we will be dealing each question one by one. The first question will be, was the child stillborn or deadborn? So we have to define the term stillborn and deadborn. So stillborn means a child which was living in the uterus just before delivery, and delivery is after 28 weeks of pregnancy, that is after attaining the age of viability of the infant, the delivery should have occurred. And after being born, the child remains still, that is it shows no signs of life or respiration. So stillborn refers to a child which was living in uterus just before delivery, then delivery is after 28 weeks of pregnancy or after attaining the age of viability. Then after being born, the child remains still, that is it shows no signs of life or respiration. So such a thing will be equivalent to death during delivery of a viable child. So if these conditions persist, we can assume that the child was stillborn. The incidence of stillborn, that is stillborn can occur in about 5% of all pregnancies. So out of 100 pregnancies, 5% of birth may be stillborn. Then stillborn is more common in priming. It is more common in case of male child, and also it is more common in case of illegitimate child. So what are the causes for stillbirth? The causes may be prematurity, congenital defect in the children, then birth traumas, placental abnormalities, toxemia of pregnancy, erythroblastosis fetal. So these are the causes that may attribute to stillbirth. Then regarding finding, autopsy findings, the body will be absolutely fresh because not much time has elapsed after death, and there are features of prolonged labor including molding of head called caput succedaneum. So there can be delayed labor, and the prolonged labor features will be seen on the infant, like molding of head. Now about the term dead bone. So dead bone means birth of a dead child having occurred in the, that should be occurred in the uterus at any stage of gestation. Normal delivery occurs about 2 days after that. So usually after the child was dead, then normal delivery will occur within 2 days after the death of the child, and depending upon the conditions of the uterus, the child manifests one of the 3 findings, like signs of maceration, signs of decomposition, or signs of mummification. This any of the 3 findings can be seen. This depends upon the conditions that are present in the uterus. Now regarding the signs of maceration, the signs of maceration results if there is plenty of liquor amne or no gas enters into the uterus. The findings may be some general findings like body may be soft, flat and reddish purple, emitting sweet, disagreeable odor. Then epidermis has large blebs containing serous or bloody fluid. Epidermis can be easily peeled, which is also referred to as skin slippage. Internal viscera, the abdomen is distended. Body cavities contain reddish, serous, turbid fluid. Internal viscera becomes edematous. Brain is grayish red or pulpy mass. And in the skull, there is overriding of skull bones known as the Spalding sign. Then umbilical cord is soft, thickened and can be easily damaged. In microscopic examination, there is evidence of inhalation of meconium from liquor amne. Now about the signs of decomposition. This results if there is sufficient liquor amne and also air enters into the uterus due to rupture of membranes. So in maceration, air does not enter into the uterus. In decomposition, air enters in the uterus due to rupture of membranes, and the findings are body will be greenish, foul smelling and bloated, and sometimes body will be in rigor mortis. The third sign that may be present include signs of mummification, and the signs of mummification results when there is less blood supply to fetus and the liquor amne is scanty and no air enters uterus. Findings of mummification may be the body is thin, shriveled but dark brown and emitting smell like rotten cheese. any of these three conditions, that is signs of maceration, signs of decomposition, or signs of mummification, may be present in case of dead bone. Now for the development of fetus, this rule, Hassay's rule, is a sure question for your university examination. The Hassay's rules is used to determine the approximate age of fetus in months. That is, in the first 5 months, the length of square root of the length of fetus in centimeter gives the approximate age of fetus, and after 5 months of gestation, age will be equal to length divided by 5, length in centimeter divided by 5. Then coming to the features of fetuses at different months, that is, we have taken lunar month into consideration. That is, at the first lunar month, the fetus will be about 1 centimeter long to 0.5 gram, and the eyes are 2 dark spots, mouth will be seen as a cleft, and limbs as small buds. At the second month, the length is about 4 centimeter, weighs about 10 grams, nose and mouth will be separate, anus seen as dark spot, and main change, that is umbilical cord, may be formed, and center of ossification may be seen for mandible, clavicle, ribs, and vertebrae. In the third lunar month, the length will be about 9 centimeter, weighs about 30 gram, next will be formed, nails appear, and placenta will be formed. This is one of the most important changes that happen in third lunar month, that is formation of placenta. And at fourth lunar month, the length will be about 16 centimeter, weighs about 120 gram, and sex can be differentiated. Lanugo hair appear on the body, convolutions of the brain begins to form, skull becomes partly ossified, so fetuses may be detectable in X-ray. So on X-ray examination, the fetus may be detectable at fourth lunar month. Then meconium is in duodenum. Center of ossification will be present in lower segments of sacrum. At fifth lunar month, the length is about 25 centimeter, weighs about 400 gram. Hair appears on the scalp. Wernicke osseosa may be present on the skin. Meconium at the beginning of large intestine. Then center of ossification for calcaneum, pubis, and ischium. At sixth lunar month, length is about 30 centimeter, weighs about 700 grams. Skin will be wrinkled, eyebrows and eyelashes appear. Testis will be close to kidney. Meconium in upper part of large intestine, and center of ossification will be seen in sternum. So from sixth lunar month, the descent of testis occurs. So at sixth lunar month, the testis will be close to kidney, and in seventh lunar month, length is about 35 centimeter, weighs about 900 to 1400 gram. Pupillary membrane disappears. Nails do not reach the end of fingers. Testis will be at external inguinal ring. So at sixth lunar month, testis will be close to kidney, and in seventh lunar month, the testis will be at external inguinal ring, and the meconium will be in the large intestine, and fetus is viable. Then center of ossification in talus. At eighth lunar month, the length is about 40 centimeter, weight is about 1.5 to 2 kilogram. Nails may reach tips of fingers. Skin is not wrinkled. Left testis in scrotum. Then center of ossification is sacrum, and in ninth lunar month, the length is about 45 centimeter, weight is about 2 to 2.5 kilogram. Scalp hair about 4 centimeter. Lanugo hair disappears. Scrotum contains both testes. Meconium at end of large intestine. Then center of ossification in lower end of femur. At 10th lunar month, the length is about 45 to 50 centimeter, 2.5 to 3 kilogram weight. Scalp hair is about 5 centimeter length. Then face is not wrinkled, skin will be pale, nails project beyond the finger, but not in case of toes. Cartilage in nose and eyes, ears will be present. Testis will be in scrotum. vulva will be closed, meconium at rectum, and placenta is about 1 centimeter thick to 22 centimeter diameter and 500 grams of weight, and center of ossification in cuboid and upper end of tibia. These are the features that help in determining the age of the fetus. And the third question we have to answer is, was the child born alive? So as per English law, live born refers to a child who is completely delivered outside the body of the mother, irrespective of severance of the cord, and cord means umbilical cord. And if this child shows signs of life and he is killed, it amounts to suicide. But in Indian law, even if a part of the body of the child is outside the body of the mother, and if he was alive, killing him amounts to infanticide. So in infant law, the body has to be completely delivered, but in Indian law, even a part of the partial delivery also amounts to infanticide. So now we have to look into the evidence for live birth. So in civil cases, crying may be an evidence for live birth. That is, at times a child may cry in vagina, which is known as vagitus vaginalis, or he may cry in uterus when soon after the rupture of membranes, which allows entry of air into the uterus, which is called vagitus uterinus. So cry in vagina means vagitus vaginalis, cry in uterus means vagitus uterinus. And then other signs like muscle movements, sneezing, yawning, pulsating umbilical cord, inspecting, palpating or auscultating fetal heart sounds, pain sensation on pinching. These are the signs of live birth. And in criminal cases, the court will have to establish live birth on specific grounds and considers establishment of respiration as an important sign of live birth. So in criminal cases, we have to look into certain specific signs. So we have to go for establishment of respiration. Then we have to look into the changes that may occur in the stomach and intestine, and lastly about the changes in kidney. So regarding establishment of respiration, we have to look into the shape of the chest, we have to look into the position of the diaphragm, we have to specifically examine lungs for its volume, consistency, color, weight, microscopic examination, as well as hydrostatic test or Ragatz test. We will be learning each topic one by one. So for establishment of respiration, we have to look into the respiratory system as a whole. So the shape of chest before respiration is flat, and after respiration it is arch shaped or dome shaped or drum shaped. And circumference of chest before respiration is 2 to 3 centimeter less than the circumference of abdomen at umbilicus. Then after respiration, circumference of chest is 2 to 3 centimeter more than circumference of abdomen at umbilicus. Then regarding the position of diaphragm before respiration, it will be at 4th to 5th rib, and after respiration it will be at 6th to 7th rib. Then coming to the most important part, that is lungs. The volume of lungs before respiration is very small, and after respiration the lung will become voluminous, and the lungs may be lying in the posterior part of pleural cavity before respiration, and after respiration it fills the whole of the pleural cavity. Margins will be sharp before respiration, and the margins will be rounded after respiration. And the pleura will be thick and loose before respiration, and after respiration the pleura will become thin and stretched. The consistency of lungs before respiration. So before respiration the lungs will be firm, and it shows a consistency like liver, and after respiration the lungs are soft, spongy and elastic. Next is about the color of lungs. Before respiration the color is dark brown like liver, and after respiration, due to entry of air and passage of blood, the lungs will become mottled or marbled. And if we cut the lungs, little fluid blood will be coming out, that is if it is before respiration, and after respiration on squeezing the cut section, frothy blood oozes out, that is blood mixed with air. Now about the weight of lung before respiration, it is about 30 to 40 centimeter, and this is called static test or Fodor's test. So before respiration, lungs will be weighing 30 to 40 gram, and after respiration it weighs about 60 to 70 gram. So demonstration of this change is called static test or Fodor's test. Now another test is to be performed called Plockett's test. This test is about the weight of lung in respect to the total body weight. So before respiration, the weight of lung is 1/70 of total body weight, and after respiration the weight of lung doubles due to increased circulation and is about 1/35 of total body weight. So by demonstrating this change in the weight ratio, it is called Plockett's test. Then about the microscopic examination of lung, that is before respiration, the lungs before respiration shows collapsed alveoli lining by cuboidal or columnar cells. Blood vessels will be prominent, alveolar duct membrane cannot be present, and after respiration the collapsed alveoli shows dilatation. Then the alveoli which was before lined by cuboidal or columnar cells will be replaced by flat squamous cells. The blood vessels will be patent and prominent, and there will be presence of alveolar duct membrane or atelectasis. This confirms live birth. Next is about hydrostatic test, which will be negative before respiration, and this will be positive after respiration. Now we will be learning about the most important test that is to be performed in lung to establish the presence of live birth, called hydrostatic test or Raygaard's test. Regarding the principle of hydrostatic test, this is related to the specific gravity of the lung. So non-respiratory lung, the specific gravity of a non-respiratory lung is 1040 to 1050, and the specific gravity of a respired lung is about 940 to 950. So the respired lung will float on water, whereas the non-respired lung will sink in water. And for reference, the specific gravity of water is 1000. So the increased volume of lungs after respiration will compensate the increase in weight after respiration. So the respired lung, being the specific gravity is less than water, it will float, and the non-respired lung whose specific gravity is more than water will sink. So what is the procedure of hydrostatic test? So for doing this test, both the lungs together along with the trachea and larynx are to be removed from the fetus, and they are tested for flotation. If this whole respiratory system floats, each lung is separately tested for flotation. If these each lung floats, then each lung is cut into 12 to 20 pieces, and then it is tested for flotation. And if these small pieces still floats, these pieces are squeezed under pressure and again tested for flotation. Now about the inference. If the pieces float even after squeezing, it confirms live birth. So while squeezing, we can remove the tidal air, but residual air still remains. So if we squeeze the lung tissue and then floats on the water, then keep it in the water, and if it floats, it confirms live birth due to the presence of residual air. And the lungs float, but the pieces sink. So lungs as a whole, if it is tested for flotation, it floats, but if it is cut into pieces, then it will sink. That means there may be feeble respiration, and sometimes it may be non-respired lung, but the initial flotation of the whole lung may be due to decomposition or attempted artificial respiration. Sometimes lungs and the pieces may sink down. So we can infer that it may not be live born, but it can be live born, but the lungs sink due to atelectasis, pulmonary edema, bronchopneumonia, etc. that will increase the weight of the lung. Some fallacies are present in this test. Sometimes a non-respired lung may float, example in case of decomposition or attempted artificial respiration. So in case of decomposition, the gases of decomposition may collect in the connective tissue, which may cause flotation of the lungs, but on squeezing, these pieces sink down. But even after squeezing, if the lung pieces float, it shows live birth. But on squeezing, if the pieces sink down, it can be presumed that the lungs contain air of or gases of decomposition. Then after attempted respiration, some gases may be collect in the lungs, causing earlier flotation, but if the lungs is cut into pieces, these pieces will sink down on squeezing. Sometimes in case of feeble respiration, the lung pieces may not float. This may be due to the air has not reached alveoli, or there may be little air present in the that is absorbed into circulation. That occurs readily if respiration stops before circulation, and another cause may be the expiratory volume is more than the inspiratory volume. Sometimes respired lung may sink down. That is due to atelectasis or causes resulting in increased specific gravity of lungs. So atelectasis is due to formation of false membrane lining the alveoli, called as alveolar duct membrane, which is present in highly membrane disease, and air entry into the lungs is prevented. So the causes for atelectasis means deficiency of surfactant, abnormal external pressure, tumor, foreign body, meconium, or aspirations. And the causes resulting in increased specific gravity of lungs include pulmonary edema and bronchopneumonia. Now the conditions were this test need not be done if the death birth is confirmed or live birth is confirmed. So death birth is confirmed if it is age less than 180 days, or signs of maceration, decomposition of or mummification of person, or in case of monster baby, the hydrostatic test may not be done. And live birth confirmed by the presence of atelectasis, altered milk present in stomach, umbilical cord is shed after mummification, etc. Hydrostatic test may not be done. Next, about the changes in stomach and intestine. So in case the child has respired, some of the air that is taken in while drinking the milk may also enter the GIT, and this air can be demonstrated radiographically, and air reaches up to stomach in 5 to 10 minutes, and air reaches up to small intestine in 1 to 2 hours, air reaches colon in 5 to 6 hours, and air reaches up to rectum in 10 to 12 hours. The second test is a Breslow second life test, that is in case of respiration has occurred, the stomach would float in water because of the air present in it. After ligating at both ends, the stomach is removed and tested for flotation. This is called Breslow second life test. And the Breslow second life test is useful in case of prevention of air into lungs, but is useless after decomposition or in cases of attempted artificial respiration. And before respiration, the stomach contains only mucus, while after respiration it contains mucus, air, and saliva. So if the stomach is punctured under water, air bubbles will be seen. So if the stomach is punctured, that is after respiration under water, air bubbles will be seen. Then the presence of altered milk in stomach confirms live birth, and presence of blood meconium and liquor amnion in stomach confirms live birth. And lastly about changes in kidney, that is presence of uric acid crystals as brown streaks at pelvis of kidney is regarded by some as a sign of live birth, and this is not confirmatory. So we have looked into the changes that is present in the respiratory system, changes in the stomach intestine, as well as changes in the kidney to confirm live birth. And if at all the baby was born alive, how long did the child serve? This is another question that we have to find answer. So an exact opinion about the time since birth to death is impossible. However, an approximate idea can be had from the following data. First is about changes in color. So the color of skin at birth is bright red and it becomes darker after 2 to 3 days. Then it is brick red at 4 to 6 days and normal color after about 1 week, and there can be presence of physiological jaundice around 3 to 5 days. Then exfoliation of skin may occur for 1 to 3 days after birth. Vernix caseosa, which is a squeezy secretion, that is a combination of sebaceous secretion plus epithelial cells, is present on skin, and especially it is present in the folds at the time of birth, and the vernix caseosa may be lost after 1 to 2 days. The second data is about caput succedaneum, that is because of molding during delivery, the presenting part, usually head, becomes elongated and swollen due to the presence of usually serous and sometimes serosanguinous fluid, and this swelling will disappear in 1 to 3 days, caput succedaneum. Another change is about cephalhematoma. So this is caput succedaneum and this is cephalhematoma. So cephalhematoma is a gross collection of blood under scalp, and this is usually occurring due to force of delivery, and it resolves in 1 to 2 weeks. So succedaneum will resolve in few days, but cephalhematoma, which contains which is a collection of blood, usually takes about 1 to 2 weeks for uh, resolving. Then next about the changes in umbilical cord. Clotting may occur at cut umbilical cord after about 2 hours. Then the umbilical cord starts drying after 12 to 24 hours. Then some inflammatory ring appears at the base of the umbilical cord in about 36 to 48 hours. Then the cord mummifies after 2 to 3 days. The cords fall off after 5 to 7 days, the range between 2 to 10 days, and there will be a ulcer at umbilicus which heals by scarring after 1 to 2 weeks, and no mummification will occur if the body is kept in water or wrapped in wet clothes, and mummification may occur even in a dead exposed fetus. These are the changes that we can expect in umbilical cord, which will be helpful to establish how long does the child survive after being born alive. Then we can demonstrate the changes that is occurring in circulation, like obliteration of vessels, that is umbilical artery obliterates after about 3 days, umbilical vein and ductus venosus obliterate after about 4 to 5 days, ductus arteriosus obliterates after 10 days, and lastly foramen ovale obliterates after about 2 months. So these are the parts that are present in fetal circulation, that is umbilical artery, umbilical vein, ductus venosus, ductus arteriosus, foramen ovale, etc. So these will obliterate after the child is being live born, and the last structure that obliterates is foramen ovale, which will close in about 2 months. Most of the other structures like umbilical artery, umbilical vein, ductus venosus, ductus arteriosus, etc. will obliterate within 10 days, and foramen ovale takes about 2 months. And foramina will sometimes obliterate at birth or closes at 2 years or rarely may not close also. Now, but RBCs, nucleated RBCs disappear in about 24 hours, which is present in the free fetal circulation. Then hemoglobin at birth is about 20 gram percentage. Rate of hemoglobin is about 20 gram percentage, and it slowly decreases to the adult range. Then fetal hemoglobin or HbF changes to adult type in about 6 months. So these are the changes that may happen in circulation, and this data may be helpful for determining how long did the child survive if it is born alive. Another change may occur in middle ear, like the gelatinous material that is present in the middle ear is replaced by air after a few days. This can be demonstrated by a test called Redin's test, and air in GIT at stomach within 5 to 10 minutes after birth, then at small intestine within 1 to 2 hours, at colon within 5 to 6 hours, and at rectum within 10 to 12 hours. Next question we have to answer is, if the child was born alive, what was the cause of death? So the cause of death of an infant can be classified into natural and unnatural cause. The unnatural cause can again be classified as accidental and criminal causes. Then the accidental cause means before delivery, that can occur before delivery, during delivery, and after delivery. And the criminal unnatural death may be caused by act of commission, like violence and poisoning, and act of omission. We will be dealing with one by one. What are the natural causes of death in an infant? The first and foremost cause is prematurity. The next one is debility, weakness, and malnutrition. Congenital deformities like monster baby encephaly, that is devoid of head. Then congenital diseases like syphilis, AIDS, plague, bacterial and viral infections. Then bacterial infections, viral infection, laryngeal spasm due to mucus, hemorrhage, radiations, diseases of placenta, erythroblastosis fetalis, and ectopic pregnancy. These are the natural causes of death in case of an infant. Next, accidental cause of death, that before delivery there can be a fall on abdomen of the pregnant woman, or a blow or kick on the abdomen. Sometimes forceful uterine contractions which is present in the pregnant lady may lead to head or skeletal or visceral injury. Then sudden death of a mother, that is a live child, can be recovered up to about 25 minutes. So even if the mother had a sudden death, the live child can be recovered after up to about 25 minutes from the dead mother. Accidental cause of death during delivery means prolonged labor, because this prolonged labor can cause fracture of skull, subdural hemorrhage, intracranial hemorrhage, or dislocation of neck may occur. Then prolapse of cord or pressure on cord, the child may die due to asphyxia. Knots of the cord may cause asphyxia, or twisting of the cord around neck may cause strangulation by the umbilical cord. Then during forceful manual correction of malpresentation, sometimes fracture of cervical vertebra may lead to accidental cause of death and sudden death of the mother. And causes of accidental death after delivery means drowning in maternal discharges, suffocation in case child is born with intact membranes, born with a caul. However, a live child can be recovered up to 20 to 30 minutes. And the last one is about precipitate labor. So precipitate labor refers to a sudden delivery without the knowledge of the mother, and all the three stages of labor occur spontaneously and suddenly. Precipitate labor is a sure shot 3-mark question that you can expect in university examination. So please study this topic thoroughly. What are the prerequisites for precipitate labor? The first and foremost prerequisite is multiparity, and precipitate labor is very rarely seen in priming. Then there is a history of perineal injury. Then if the fetus is having small body, so the delivery occurs suddenly when the lady is standing or sitting on a lavatory pan. Causes of death in case of precipitate labor: sometimes head injury may be present due to fall of uterus into the ground or on the lavatory plan. Then he may drown in lavatory waters if he is going head first. Then hemorrhage from the torn umbilical cord, usually at the fetal end, may cause bleeding. And if we have to examine a baby who is died of precipitate labor, we can demonstrate small foetid baby, and the placenta is usually present along with the baby. Head injury in form of injury to scalp, head, etc., as well as intracranial hemorrhages may be present. Usually foreign body as fecal matter or earth may be present on the body. No other injury or cause of death. No features of molding. So in case the labor pains are mild, so that they are not noticed by the mother, they may terminate into delivery, a condition known as pseudo precipitate labor. Then sometimes unconscious delivery may occur during epileptic fit, coma, hysteria, hypnosis, or under influence of narcotics, anesthetics, or alcohol. So, the medical legal importance of precipitate labor is that precipitate labor may be confused with infanticide, and sometimes infanticide may be confused with precipitate labor. So, we have to be very careful while diagnosing the death as occurred from precipitate labor. Next, about the criminal causes of death. So, criminal causes of death can be due to acts of commission or act of omission. So, we are first going to learn about act of commission. So, the act of commission refers to certain act committed by the mother or anybody else so as to cause the death of the child. It can be due to mechanical violence or due to poisoning. Mechanical violence means it can be due to suffocation like smothering, gagging, crush, asphyxia, etc. It can be due to strangulation, drowning, head injury, cervical injury, cutthroat injury, other injuries like penetrating or non-penetrating injuries, burying alive or burning. And lastly, another cause is poisoning. We'll be looking into one. Act of commission: first one is suffocation. The causes may be smothering, gagging, or crush asphyxia. In smothering can be caused by closing the nose and mouth with hand, closing the nose and mouth with a cloth or pillow, holding the child tightly to breast while feeding, or overlaying the child, that is lying over the child. Second is about gagging, that is forcing a piece of cloth or mud in oral cavity, forcing a finger into the oral cavity, etc. A third is about crush asphyxia, that is causing pressure on the chest. What are the findings that are present if the case the baby is died due to suffocation? External and internal injuries on the areas of violence may be present. There may be signs of asphyxia. Foreign body may be seen in oral cavity or respiratory tract if gagging is used. Next is about strangulation. The causes of strangulation may be that the neck may be compressed by hand, which is called as throttling. It may be compressed by cloth, string, or using umbilical cord. Findings may be external and internal injuries on neck, signs of asphyxia, or bloody froth at nose and mouth. In case of drowning, the causes may be due to submersion of the body in water or milk, or sometimes drowning may be post-mortem. Findings include signs of asphyxia, presence of froth at nose and mouth, presence of froth and fluid in respiratory passages, fluid in the stomach, edema, aqueosum of lungs, etc. Then head injury, the causes may be a blow on the head, felling the child from a height, hitting the head against a hard object, and the postmortem findings include injuries on the scalp, hemorrhages under the scalp, fractures of the skull, intracranial hemorrhage, contusion or laceration of brain, etc. Then the next causes cervical injury due to violence on the neck, and the findings may be fracture of cervical vertebra, hemorrhage in spinal cord, etc. And in cutthroat injury, the causes may be the neck is cut with a hard object like glass or knife, etc., sword, etc. The findings may be external and internal injuries to neck. Other injuries, that is classified into penetrating and non-penetrating injuries. Then in case of penetrating injury, a thin object like needle, pin, knitting needle or scissors is thrust into the fontanelle or inner canthus of eye, nose, ear, throat, rectum, vagina, neck or axilla, which may result in concealed puncture wounds which may cause death of the child. Regarding the non-penetrating wounds, any major trauma resulting in injury to blood vessels, multiple bones or thoraco-abdominal viscera also may result in death. Last is about burn. The child may be burnt, that is in oven, etc. And we can find burn injuries. Sometimes the child may be burnt alive, and it is found in respiratory system, GIT and natural orifices. And sometimes poisoning may be done, and the poison may be fed to the child, or poison may be smeared into the nipple while breastfeeding him. And the common poisons that are used for infanticide include arsenic, datura, calotropes, tobacco and insecticides. Now the second criminal act is like act of omission. So the law expects the mother to take certain precautions for safe delivery and growth of the child, and the failure or omitting of these precautions, to take these precautions, can be charged with infanticide, and if the child dies. The precautions that are expected from a mother are to arrange for a competent obstetrician for delivery, to remove the child from her discharges after delivery, to ensure proper ligation of the cut umbilical cord, to protect the child from heat or cold, to provide to child necessary food as per his age. So these are the precautions. These are the precautions that the law expects the mother to take for safe delivery and growth of the child. Then in case of autopsy in infanticide, we have to examine certain things like the wrapping clothes. Then we have to take the body measurements. We have to look for signs of maceration or decomposition. We have to look for the vernix and vernix caseosa and caput succedaneum. We have to look for malformations. We have to look for the birth injuries. We have to look for the condition of umbilical cord and the condition of placenta. We have to estimate the ossification centers, which will help in the estimation of age of the child, intrauterine age of the child. Then in case of injuries present, we have to look for the external as well as internal injuries, and also for the signs of live birth. Now coming to the medico legal aspects of infanticide. First one is abandoning of a child. So whoever leaves a child below 12 years somewhere with the intention of abandoning him, he is guilty under section 317 IPC. So leaving a child who is below 12 years somewhere with the intention of abandoning him, he is guilty under section 317 of IPC, and if the child does not die, he will be given an imprisonment up to 7 years or fine or both. And if the child dies after being abandoned, he is guilty of murder under section 302 IPC. Second is about concealment of birth. So whoever secretly disposes of the dead body of a child with the intention of concealing his birth, he is guilty of section 318 IPC, and the imprisonment may be up to 2 years or fine or both. And if the child is kept open at a public place, it is not offense, and it is not material whether the death occurred before, during or after delivery. Then another important topic called SIDS, or sudden infant death syndrome. This is also a favorite topic for examiners to ask in your question paper. So this question has appeared many times in the university examinations. So SIDS or sudden infant death syndrome means sudden natural death of an apparently healthy child below 2 years, usually at 2 to 4 months, and the cause of death cannot be explained even after a careful post-mortem examination, because usually the death occurs during sleep. It is known as cot death or crib death. So as per WHO, SIDS is a natural cause of death. Now, about the characteristics of SIDS, it is seen in about 0 to 3% of all deliveries. The male child to female child ratio is 3 is to 2. It is more seen in twins, and it is more in low socioeconomic group. It is more seen during rainy season or winter season, and it is more seen in mothers who smoke or abuse drugs, and most commonly the death occurred during late night. Now, about the causes of SIDS, some scientists suggest that infants have prolonged sleep apnea, which may lead to hypoxia and death. Some other causes like prematurity, debility, respiratory infections, laryngeal spasm, hypersensitivity of respiratory lumen, hypothyroidism, cortisone deficiency, etc. May be causes of SIDS, and there is usually no postmortem findings in autopsy. And the medical aspects of SIDS include cot death. This may be confused with infanticide, and vice versa, like infanticide may be confused with SIDS. So, some precautions may be taken to protect the child from SIDS, like we have to ensure the crib is properly assembled, and always place the baby on his or her back to sleep. Then we have to keep a smoke-free zone around around our baby. Then we have to remove everything other than his mattress and sheet from the crib when baby is sleeping, and use a firm mattress with no more than 2 fingers width between the crib and the mattress. And do not overclothe the baby while sleeping, and the baby should not be hot to the touch. And there should be more than soda can width between the bars, and keep the baby in mom's room but in a separate sleeping area. Once breastfeeding is established after a pacifier, then use a blanket sleeper. Never use loose blankets. Another medical finding is Caffey syndrome. This is non-accidental injury of childhood, and it is otherwise known as battered child syndrome, battered baby syndrome. So questions may be asked using the synonyms like battered baby syndrome or Caffey syndrome. So this refers to a child who is a victim of repeated beating or torture, and this is usually by his parents, the child being about 2 to 5 years of age group. The causes of infanticide include loss of temper, excessive anger, use of drugs, drinks, poverty, illegitimate children, unwanted children, and mental imbalance in parents. The characteristics of battered baby syndrome: the child will be usually in the 2 to 5 year age group, more commonly seen for male child. The parents usually in 20 to 30-year age group, uneducated, low socioeconomic status, history of family disharmony, emotional or financial problems, and usually the father has a criminal record, and he will be usually out of job and usually battered in his childhood. Caffey, scientist in 1974 described the effect of violent shaking of a child, and this may result in subdural hematoma and intraocular bleeding, and this is known as infantile whiplash syndrome. There is a triad of symptoms like retinal hemorrhage, then brain swelling, and subdural hemorrhage. This triad is seen in infantile whiplash syndrome. So in Caffey syndrome, the child may be physically or sexually assaulted or tortured mentally. Then there may be multiple injuries, bites, burns, or fractures. There may be multiple injuries like fractures of different ages, indicating different times of their decision. Then there may be multiple scars of old healed injuries. Child may be maimed for begging. There may be deprivation of food, care, or affection. Diagnosis of battered baby syndrome is like the presence of multiple injuries or fractures of different ages, delay in seeking medical treatment, a gross discrepancy in explanation by parents and nature of injuries. These are the crucial aspects that helps in diagnosis of battered baby syndrome. And sometimes the death may result from fracture of skull, intracranial hemorrhages, injury to internal viscera, burns, or scalds. Next is about Munchausen's syndrome by proxy. So here the child abuse involving the mother, the child inflicts violence and may bring the child repeatedly to hospital for treatment with false history. There may be battered wives and battered husbands. Battered wives means repeated assault of wives by their husband, usually under influence of alcohol, and such lady may commit suicide or leave the home. In since a few years, there is also results for assault of husbands by their wives also. And we are coming to an end of today's topic. The topics discussed in this discussion were the definition of infanticide, role of a registered medical practitioner in case of infanticide, signs of live birth, natural and accidental cause of death, criminal cause of death of an infant, medical legal aspects of infanticide, sudden infant death syndrome, battered baby syndrome, Munchausen syndrome by proxy. Thank you.